Justice is rendering what is due or merited and that which is due or merited. Discretion. At all levels of the justice process, officials exercise high degree of discretion. Next, resource. Criminal justice agencies generally do not generate their own resources, operating funds, staff, and equipment, but depend on others for them. Therefore, criminal justice actors, police, chief, prosecutor, judges frequently must cultivate and maintain good relationship with people responsible for the allocation of resources. Sequential. Decisions in the criminal justice officials task made in particular sequence. Next, filtering. Term used to describe the process which will identify and remove convictions and cautions which should no longer be disclosed on certificates due to changes to legislation. Legislative branch is authorized to make laws, alter, and repeal them through the power vested in the Philippine Congress. This institution is divided into Senate and the House of Representatives. Executive branch, composed of the President and Vice President who are elected by direct popular vote and serve a term of 6 years. The Constitution grants the President authority to appoint his cabinet. Judicial branch holds the power to set the controversies involving rights that are legally demandable and enforceable. This branch determines whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or exist of jurisdiction on the part and instrumentally of the government. It is made up of a Supreme Court and lower courts. Senate, composed of 24 senators who shall be elected at large by the qualified voters of the Philippines, as may be provided by law. Next, House of Representatives, composed of not more than 250 members, unless otherwise fixed by the law, who shall be elected from legislative districts apportioned among the provinces, cities, and the metropolitan Manila area in accordance with the number of their respective inhabitants. President leads the country. He or she is the head of state, leader of the national government, and commander-in-chief of all armed forces of the Philippines. Next, Vice President supports the President. If the President is unable to serve, he or she becomes President. Next, Cabinet serve as advisors to the President. They include the Vice President and the heads of executive departments. Cabinet members are nominated by the President and must be confirmed by Commission of Appointments. Next, the Revised Katarungang Pambarangay Law, Section 399 to 422, Chapter 7, Title 1, Book Number 3, Republic Act 7160. RA 7160, an act providing for a local government code of 1991. Presidential Decree Number 1508, Katarungang Pambarangay Law. Next, repudiation shall be sufficient basis for the issuance of the certification for filing a compliant. Next, the law enforcement pillar consists of the police, the primary police agency that symbolizes the law enforcement pillar is the PNP. To understand how the PNP evolved as the leading law enforcement agency, the evolution of police service in our country might be able to help. Next, Spanish regime. Inherently part of the military system, the locally organized police forces, although performing civil duties and seemingly created for the sole purpose of maintaining peace, were in fact directly commanded by the colonial military government. Next, Carabineros de Seguridad Público or Mounted Police was organized on 1712 for the purpose of carrying out the policies of the Spanish government. Carabineros were armed and considered as the mounted police. Next, Guardia Civil was the police organization created by the royal decree issued by the Spanish Crown government on February 12, 1852. It received the Spanish peninsular troops of their works in policing towns. Next, Japanese occupation. Japanese military police known as Kimpitai was held responsible in maintaining peace and order in Manila. The Manila Police, which it was created during the first American occupation, was renamed into Metropolitan Constabulary under the Bureau of Constabulary. Next, American occupation. First American occupation in the Philippines that came after the Filipino-American War 1898 to 1901 was followed by a period of political ferment and social imbalance. Next, Insular Police Force was established on November 30, 1890 during the Filipino-American War 1890 to 1901 upon the recommendation of the Philippine Commission to the Secretary of War. Next, Manila Police was organized on July 31, 1901 by virtue of Act Number 175 titled as an act providing for the organization and government of an insular constabulary. Next, law enforcement may refer to the policing body of the society of the police force created by the government. Next, police power is the capacity of the states to regulate behavior and enforce order within their territory for the betterment of the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of their inhabitants. Next, criminal law is that branch of division of law which defines crimes, threats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. Crime is defined as an act committed or committed in violation of public law forbidding or commanding it. General, the criminal law is binding on all persons who live or sojourn in Philippine territory. Next, territorial, that criminal law undertakes to punish crimes committed within Philippine territory. Next, prospective, that penal law cannot make an act punishable in a manner in which it was not punishable when committed. French rule. Such crimes are triable in that country unless their commission affects the peace and security of the territory or the safety of the state is endangered. Next, English rule. Such crimes are triable in that country unless they merely affect things within the vessel or they refer to the internal management thereof. Next, felonies are acts and commissions punishable by the revised penal code. Next, act. Any bodily movement lending to produce some effect in the external world. Next, omission is meant in action the failure to perform a positive duty which one is bound to do. Next, mistake of fact. A misapprehension of fact on the part of the person who caused injury to another. Next, malaense. Wrongful from their nature, those so serious in their effects on society as to call for the almost unanimous condemnation of its new offense. Next, offense. An act or commission that is punishable by special laws such as Republic Act, Presidential Decree, Executive Orders, Memorandum, Circulars, Ordinances, and Rules and Regulations. Next, penalty is the suffering that is inflicted by the state for transgression of a law. Next, complex crimes. When a single act constitutes two or more grave or less grave felonies or when an offense is a necessary means for committing the other, the penalty for the most serious crime shall be imposed. Next, aberratio ictus, mistake in the vow. Next, continued crime is a single crime consisting of a series of acts but all arising from one criminal resolution. Next, error in persona, mistake in the identity of the victim. Next, greater intentioning, the injurious result is greater than that intended. Next, restitution, in thief, the culprit is duty bound to return the property stolen. Reparation, in case of inability to return the property stolen, the culprit must pay the value of the property stolen. Next, appeal. Request to a higher appellate court for that court to review and change the decision of a lower court. Next, acquittal. A jury verdict that a criminal defendant is not guilty or the finding of a judge that the evidence is insufficient to support a conviction. Next, battery. The application of force to another resulting in harmful or offensive contact. Next, bribery. The corrupt payment, receipt, or solicitation of a private favor for official action. Next, inherent. Those that must of necessity accompany the commission of the crime. Next, alternative circumstances. Aggravating or mitigating according to the nature and effect of the crime and offer conditions attending its commission. Next, instigation. Public officer or private detective induces an innocent person to commit a crime and would arrest him upon or after the commission of the crime by him. Next, entrapment. A person has planned or is about to commit crime and ways and means are resorted to by public officer to trap and catch the criminal, not a defense. Next, accident. Any happening beyond control of persons, consequences of which are not foreseeable. Next, trickery. When the offender commits any of the crime against the person, employing means, methods, or forms in the execution thereof, which tend directly and specially to ensure its execution without risk to himself arising from the defense which the offended party might make. Next, ignominy, moral suffering. Next, cruelty, deliberate intention to prolong physical suffering of the victim. Next, habitual delinquency, within 10 years from last release or last conviction of the crime of falsification, robbery, estafa, thief, serious or less serious physical injuries, the offender is found guilty of any of said crimes a third time offerer. Next, responsibility is the obligation of suffering the consequences of crime. It is the obligation of taking the penal and civil consequences of the crime. Next, guilt is an element of responsibility for a man cannot be made to answer for the consequences of a crime unless he is guilty. Next, grave felonies are those to which the law attach the capital punishment or penalties which in any of their periods as affiliative. Next, less grave felonies are those which the law punishes with penalties which in their maximum period are correctional. Next, light felonies are those interactions of law for the commission of which the penalty of arresto minor or a fine not exceeding 200 pesos is provided. Next, justifying circumstances are those where the cut of person is said to be in accordance with law, so that such person is deemed not to have transgressed the law and is free from both criminal and civil liability. Next, exempting circumstances are those grounds for exemption from punishment because there is wanting in the agent of the crime any of the conditions which make the act voluntary or negligent. Next, appellate jurisdiction. It can try a case already here and decided at the lower court removed from the latter by appeal. Next, exclusive jurisdiction. It can try and decide a case that cannot be presented to any other court. Next, concurrent jurisdiction, when any of two or more courts may take cognizance of a case. Next, criminal jurisdiction, to try a case where there is punishment or penalty provided by the law.